Welcome to the Future Series. I'm your host, Anthony Dan, and for those of you that are new to the podcast, we talk with real founders about building a business for the future. So whether you're starting your first business or looking to start your first side hustle, we're able to give you the nuggets of information to help you succeed in the future of work. So today we've got an extremely interesting guest on the podcast, Christina Porter from Invisix. Christina, how's it going?
Yeah, going great. Thanks so much for having me here.
Oh, thank you so much for jumping on. Now, you've got one of the most interesting and unique businesses that we've had on the podcast. So for all the listeners, would you be able to give us just a quick introduction of yourself, Invisix, and what it is that you guys do?
Absolutely. So I'm Christina. I am the CEO of this short wavelength measuring system company called Invisix, which is building instruments that are allowing us to measure the 3D shapes of the most advanced devices that are getting made by chip makers today. So the Samsung or TSMC or Intel or Micron or Hynixes of the world. And as we have moved forward in time, these devices are shrinking smaller and smaller and becoming increasingly three-dimensional. And the complexity of them has meant that now visible light can no longer be used to measure these devices anymore. And so what we're doing is building a company that is shrinking the wavelength of the light that we use to measure chips so that we have enough resolution to basically see back their full detail, which chip makers need to be able to do to control their processes as they build up the device, because a device is like a 200-story skyscraper. You have to build it up layer by layer, and at every single layer you want to check, are all of the rooms and the doors and the windows inside of the building the right shape and the right size. Otherwise the thing will not connect up and will fall over. So yeah, that's what we are doing. We're making these measuring systems for the most advanced devices.
Amazing. And these are the chips that are powering the different technology and AI that everyone's using today with their Claudes, their ChatGPTs, etc.
Absolutely, yeah. So these are advanced logic and memory devices that are going into the high-performance compute that is being used in all of these data centers that are powering everybody's, indeed, cloud sessions.
I love it. Amazing. Well, there's a lot that we can jump into and get into throughout the podcast, but it'd be great just to have a little look back at your early career and how you got into this semiconductor world and where it all started.
Yeah, totally. So I am a physicist. I am originally from the United States. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, but the work of this company Invisix for me began at the University of Colorado at Boulder. And in 2014, so about 12 years ago, I was there working in the group of Margaret Murnane and Henry Captain, who are some of the pioneers of this light source called high harmonic generation, which you can just think of as a short wavelength laser. It's not a laser, but you can think of it like that. And when I was there, we could make photons, and then we were trying to figure out what to do with them. And we started to reconstruct semiconductor devices using lensless imaging algorithms. And that basically got the attention or the interest of ASML in the Netherlands, and they came over and visited our lab at the beginning of 2015, and I pitched them this application, and they thought it was interesting enough to move or to try out in an industrial setting, which they launched at ASML that year as a result, and they made the soft X-ray metrology program that ran for 10 years. Inside of ASML, sort of incubating and growing the technology to a level that it could really be industrial and learning about what it was really for with customers and so on. And I joined them a few years later when I was done in Colorado. Had the dream of really seeing academic work turn into something that is having an impact on the world. I like the idea of science for industry. That's totally still the dream.
Yeah, it's amazing. It must be great to see that all that research come to life and actually be starting to be used in an industrial setting.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, it's incredibly rare that you would have the luxury of seeing your PhD really directly before something. So yeah, that is quite a gift, I think, to get to see that come somewhere.
Yeah, indeed. And then, so part of that move to ASML, you actually moved over to the Netherlands then as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, I also really wanted to move to Europe. So it was a lucky coincidence that this company that was probably the best at making short wavelength instrumentation in the world was also interested in doing this thing that I cared about and was also on the continent that I wanted to live on. So all of that came together really nicely. And yeah, my husband and I both came over and have been super happily settled here in the Netherlands. It's a incredibly nice and kind of easy place to immigrate to. So we have never regretted that choice and have been here now for 7.5 years.
Amazing. And how was that going into ASML? Because it's obviously a very different beast to doing research at universities into a very large private company.
Yeah.
On
So
the research side, or
ASML grew a ton while I was there. I think they doubled roughly, or maybe even a little bit more. It went from like 19,000 to 40 something thousand over those years. So yeah, it's a huge company, but at least in the early years when I was there, it still kind of had a early stage feeling about it. And I was working in the research department. It was sort of still before EUV had totally and completely the EUV was landing. It was like at the time of it. And if you don't know what EUV is, it's short wavelength lithography tool. So a chip printer as opposed to a chip measuring tool. That's what ASML specializes in mostly. And they went from fighting to take a strong position to totally dominating and having an amazing position on this short wavelength lithography thing while I was there. So it was a cool place to do science because they had a neat research group that was still relatively small inside of a huge company where our soft X-ray program landed in the early days. And later, when we had enough traction to work with customers, we moved into the development and engineering organization, which is where they really do product development stuff. That's a much more huge organization. But in the research organization, it was a relatively soft landing. It's full of scientists, full of PhDs, and yeah, that was a good way to start.
amazing. And then, so you were there for what was about 7 years or so, and towards the end, you were talking more and more about this sort of new business line around the imaging and the measuring tools. What was that last, or how did this thing develop then into becoming Invisix? What was this process?
Yeah. So let's say we started talking to customers about this technology and started to do demos on it in 2020. So we actually went through quite a while of getting to go around and figure out, what are the real layers, what are the real use cases where this is something that's necessary and does it really work on them? And then we started to get sort of increasing traction to really develop a system that would be able to be shipped. And we began to do that in the development and engineering organization at the beginning of 2023. But at that moment, there was already this sort of like contemplation of how do we land this within the company, because it was a little bit of an odd duck always. We were going into their applications business line, but did we really fit there was sort of a question. So at that moment, I actually read this book that my group leader at ASML gave me when we were having this whole contemplation, and it's the Innovator's Dilemma.
Yeah.
A book that says that these kinds of really new and disruptive technologies don't necessarily fit that well in hugely growing or already huge organizations that are very mature, because they do better usually when you've got an organization that's kind of like sized and tuned in all of its processes for making sort of early stage disruptive stuff. So I read that and I was like, oh gosh, I really think this might be better to pull out of ASML and do as its own company if we could. And it seemed like an incredible long shot that would never happen at the time, but I anyway was at least bold enough to put a copy of that book on the desk of some of our senior leaders. So I put it on the desk of our CTO, Martin Vandenbrink, and said, hey, I think we should take this out. But at the time, he really wanted to do it internally and really thought ASML should do it. So instead, we just sort of built a bit of a fence around ourselves so that we could kind of quietly still within their organization build up the program. And that worked pretty well. And then, later on, ultimately did decide, or ASML ultimately did decide that they wanted to focus quite narrowly on lithography, and this was also correlated with a change in leadership at the company. So Martin retired, and then Christoph had a bit of a new strategy direction there. So he wanted to be really, really all about printers and the measuring tools for these chip printers, and ours was more focused around helping you control etch or deposition on sort of the hot topic use cases that customers were really asking for. So yeah, then at that point, a few years later, it became very reasonable to actually take it out of ASML, because if they didn't want to do it themselves, then it was kind of available. And we had this nice technology, and we had convinced ourselves that it really did work, and we had a very clear view of like what it was for, and yeah, increasingly interesting business case as this whole AI thing was just starting. We stepped out like just before AI really boomed, and that was a bit of a lucky break. But yeah, it all kind of magically came together into a situation where it was possible to do it externally. Yeah, well, thanks to the ASML folks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. When did you read that Innovator's Dilemma book? How long was that between then and actually coming out?
I think I read it in the beginning of 2023, somewhere early in the spring that year. And then at the end of 2024, ASML decided that they didn't want to do it internally anymore. And then sort of immediately I was, one day later, like, okay, can we license this out? And had already, prepared the conversation with some of our internal executives earlier than that. So it was not a totally wild idea. It was something we had talked about in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really interesting. So it's kind of over this 2-year period, I guess, then, of understanding that you might want to set something up externally, going through all the different processes, etc., internally to be able to do so. What was that like, sort of mentally as well? And would you consider yourself a bit of an entrepreneur, that you're always thinking about setting something up, or is it just happen chance with the opportunity that came?
Yeah, so my whole family is full of entrepreneurs. It was a very natural thing to do in my world that people would start a business. So that was not like a crazy feeling. My parents together had a consulting company in California. My uncle is an entrepreneur in real estate. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. So like, yeah, there's a long history of people kind of having the guts to do crazy things and make companies, and therefore, yeah, nobody was screaming that I was too crazy for thinking of trying. And yeah, I think I saw one of these great interviews by Jensen Huang where he was like, yeah, the illness of entrepreneurs is that they have just the like, how hard can it be mindset, and the answer is like super hard, but the good thing is you just have this funny thing in your mind. It's like, well, and I said to myself often, like, well, humans have done companies before, so I'm in the set of humans. It's probably possible to do. Then you just go try. So yeah,
That's good. It's that naive optimism.
yeah, indeed. But then again, I also always had the idea that nobody ever said it was going to be easy. So like. It is technically possible, but it is going to be, extremely challenging, and 95% chance it won't work. So, that was always kind of the mindset. But I don't know. Thought it was worth giving it a go.
No, that's brilliant. And obviously, other people thought that it was a good idea as well. So you've been through funding rounds, haven't you, and raised 20 million euros in seed funding.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. We got this round together. It was kind of a wild chicken and egg situation, because when you're trying to step out of a company, you need a licensing deal, and to get the licensing deal you need to have an outlook to money, and to get money you need to have a licensing deal, and to get money you also need people, and to get people you need to have both of the other things. So it was sort of this like, how do we get this whole thing together? But yeah, we had incredible support and trust from one of our main customers that was able to break that whole chicken and egg thing down, and that's how we were eventually able to get the whole thing to come together. And sort of at the same moment, after a year of negotiating and asking and talking to people, we had the license and the funding and the team sort of all come within the space of about a month or so.
Brilliant. So it's been a long time of planning and trying and negotiations, and then suddenly together in a month it's all there and you're ready to go.
Yeah, super satisfying.
I imagine. And what was that like, sort of emotionally and mentally, to finally have everything signed on the line? You were there, you're ready, you're away.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was funny. So we were also applying for the EIC Accelerator, this grant in Europe, and we were shooting our video for our application. And the day that we got the license signed with ASML, we were actively shooting this video session And we were presenting on a screen, and up on the screen came the like DocuSign for the license thing, and then the whole team just was, yeah, super excited to get to stand there and watch as we really signed off on the thing. And then we all kind of looked each other in the eye, and it was like, okay, it's really going to happen. And yeah, I think 4 hours later, people started resigning from ASML to come join us. And yeah, pretty much, like the next day we had a company. So that was a great moment. And we were doing it that day also for the first week in our new office, which we had like just signed a lease on. And yeah, it all really came together at one moment, and it was a cool moment.
Oh, beautiful. That sounds magical. One of those moments that you'll remember for a very long time, I'm
Indeed.
sure. Amazing. And then what was that sort of first 3-6 months? Because you're just over a year old now, aren't you?
Yep. Yeah, so we've really been going in earnest since January. We went from 0 people to about 50 people in half a year. We've got, yeah, not all of them internal, but like we're 20 people internally or so. And then the rest hired through our ecosystem of contractors in the Eindhoven area, but most of the team already was working on this program in the ASML setting. So yeah, depends how you count. But anyway, we've grown really quickly, enabled by the fact that we have continuity in the team, so people are not coming in fresh. They have been working on this in some cases for 10 years. We have, I think, really operationalized quite fast. I'm happy with that progress. We have moved our prototype system, so we have a tool that's able to measure wafers for customers and do demos and stuff. We took that thing apart, unplugged 1,000 wires, moved it across town into its new clean room, and totally rebuilt it and got it going again, and it's working. So that was kind of awesome to see happen, that the team was able to do that sort of all the way on track, on time, all the way through. And we're starting again measurements for customers now. So yeah, this has been, I think, quite a operationally smooth first half year, and there's been sort of an increasing amount of interest and enthusiasm in this whole AI infrastructure ecosystem, let's say, in the last months. So there's been a lot of active interest, which is cool to see.
Yeah, indeed. You're definitely in the right place at the right time. Have you found very much this sort of AI wave as you've come with the right surfboard at the right time and jumping in the
Totally.
right spot?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's sort of an incredible bit of luck to have started 10 years ago on something that, like, at the exact moment when it's ready, is actually able to solve a challenge. Well, which, of course, we always, it's not like magic, because you can see roadmaps like this 10 years in advance, and you can see that devices are going to get 3D. And if you're, a scientist, you can say, okay, well, that's going to be a really big measuring challenge. So you actually do have visibility on that this should matter, right? But that the exact timing is so good where the rest of the world also realizes that this does matter is a bit of luck.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I speak to various different entrepreneurs, and there's lots of times where all the stars align, but for all of the stars to align in like a global setting as well is really when you set yourself up to be a top performer or a unicorn.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Hopefully, fingers crossed, right? Anything can happen, and the global market is wild, but I think at this moment, yeah, there's a lot of momentum, and people are realizing that it's not just all about hardware, or software, I should say. It's not just all about algorithms and language models, right? You actually need to make real serious progress on hardware in order to enable this whole boom, and that those can be good bets, because that hardware is, challenging to develop and has a pretty good moat around it. So yeah, I think and hope that we're going to be able to continue well with this momentum, but let's see how it goes.
Yeah, indeed. And for you yourself then as well, are you still involved technically in the sort of day to day, or have you had to take yourself back a bit more from a CEO perspective and focus on the actual running of the business as well as the actual technical side?
Yeah, so you can't take me away from technical. I just fundamentally am technical. So yeah, no, this thing is really my baby, and I've been at it for a while now. So I'm super involved still. I think the thing that I think is the most fun and that I'm always the deepest involved in is our customer work. And you're allowed to do that as a CEO, but I am also very involved in the technical side of that. So and has always been what brings me joy, because then you can really like learn how your technology can actually have an impact, and like the coming together of these really hard problems and these really cool customer research science groups, and our own science group is like very fun. So that is, let's say, the area where I remain always closest, is when we're doing demo work. And but I am, yeah, well, I'm all over the place in technical meetings, but no, I'm also spending a lot of time really building the business, and we also have a great COO who has a long background in running, multi-thousand person companies, so he's a huge help in getting us operationalized and helping us build that business as well. And I'm spending time, of course, towards the outside world, telling stories. Here we are, and raising more money and so on. But yeah, I definitely intend to remain in a strong technical, at least understanding and hopefully impact role on our company.
Yeah, brilliant. And what does the next sort of 12 months and 3 years or 5 years look like for Invisix then? Where are you going to be?
Yeah. So we are going to bring a tool to market, and I'm not announcing the exact date that we will ship, but it's relatively foreseeable. So it's coming pretty quickly, and yeah, we are going to get these early access systems out to our customers as fast as they can, so that they can gain trust on them with our or their hardest problems, and then immediately thereafter we will bring a version of the tool that is really high volume ready. So yeah, we are going from a prototype to a real first product is the stage that we're at right now. And that requires growing, and that requires having, both growing internally, but also getting all of our suppliers and contract manufacturers and so on to really be ready to do this at scale and not just make one tool. And so that's what we're focusing on.
Fantastic. I love it. I love the whole story, but also the business that you're building here, really focusing on this sort of enterprise, big picture look. There's a lot of other founders that we speak to that sell into all sorts of different industries, but I don't think we've had any that focus right at the top at the sort of biggest companies in the world that are producing these products and everything you're doing at the moment, which is amazing and fascinating. From a founder perspective then, having gone through this recently, what advice would you have for maybe people that are in an ASML or in a big tech company that may be working on a project or always, like you said, had that entrepreneurial spirit or entrepreneurial itch? What advice would you have for someone in that position?
Yeah. Well, what I say to everybody always is you can do you cannot do a single thing more than you think you can do. So you have to sort of have this naive belief that you can probably maybe do something. And if you're too afraid, you will never try. So yeah, an attitude of if humans have done it, then theoretically I can do it too is always helpful. And an understanding that it's brutally challenging is also helpful. And when it's really, really hard, knowing that that's just part of it is a good thing. There's some really good books out there, so I feel like a lot of what I did was just like read books and then try them out. If you want to leave your corporate job, then you should read The Innovator's Dilemma. If you want to start to learn how to be a CEO, then your first activity should be to read Venture Deals. It's just a language that you need to learn that is laid out very nicely in one book, and afterwards you feel much more like it's humanly possible to turn into a CEO if you want to. You need to learn to negotiate. If you ever want to do a licensing deal with a huge corporation, you need to become infinitely more patient than you began. And what else? Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot. It's a hard path, but it's also an incredibly satisfying path. So you kind of gotta really commit yourself to it.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's tough but rewarding.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's certainly not for everybody. I think, who was it? Maybe it was also Jensen. Yeah, it's sort of just like something that lives inside of you as an illness or something. Like you got to get it out of yourself if you are an entrepreneur. Like you don't really choose to be, and it's not necessarily nice to be, but you just sort of need to make something like this. I guess. I don't know. I think it's true.
I like that. Interesting way to put it. It's an illness that lives inside of you. Sometimes you just need to get out.
Indeed.
Brilliant. Well, Christina, it's been really, really interesting, fascinating talking to you and hearing the whole story and what you're doing at the moment with Invisix. It sounds great, and we'd love to sort of keep in touch and hear about the journey as you progress as well.
Of course, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's a very nice opportunity to chat, and thanks for the cool questions.
Yeah, no worries at all. If anyone was listening to the podcast and they were really interested in asking you a question or reaching out, what would be the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, you can ping me on LinkedIn or send an email. There's a contact form on our website, and yeah, we will check these things.
Amazing. Well, yeah, thank you again, Christina, for coming on and being an awesome guest.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries, and thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.